bless the years as they roll on by, and the days are a sign of what you're thinking. We want eternity, and you give us time, and our own lives seem to pass while we're blinking. Oh God of mysteries beyond our thinking, oh God of mysteries gone far beyond our thinking. We ask for light, you give us night and day to help us truly find our own way. We want you only, yet you keep us apart, so that we may mend our own broken hearts. Oh God of mystery beyond our thinking, oh God of mysteries far, far beyond our thinking. We live through life and we wonder if you'll be there when it's all ended. You keep your silence, but you give us a sign to let us know we are always befriended. Oh God of mysteries beyond our thinking, oh God of mysteries gone, gone beyond our thinking. Happy is the one who comes to you. Happy is the one, happy are the two. And we dwell in your house, and we eat at your table, and we say the prayers as our hearts are able. Oh God of mystery beyond our thinking, oh God of mystery gone, gone, gone beyond our thinking.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful start to the autumn season. On behalf of the Foundation for Non-Duality, we welcome you to our 10th Non-Dual Roundtable discussion, where we, a panel of Jason Schulman's senior students and teachers, discuss the interface between ideas about non-duality and our daily lives. So we're excited to be here with you. And as you may or may not know, The Foundation for Non-Duality is dedicated to making the principles of non-dual thinking and practice, as articulated by Jason Schulman, available to the greater public for the purpose of transforming the consciousness of individuals in order to help alleviate suffering in the world. These principles and their practical application focus on the unitive connection between personal and transcendent consciousness as the foundational basis for change and healing. Jason Schulman sees the study of non-duality, especially in its practical applications in everyday living, as part of the healing of the human soul. The aim is to live our lives as both healing and healthy individuals who are aware of and connected to the entire web of being, including the totality of who we are. And living the totality of who we are, the totality of our being, means including all of our human parts in our awareness, from our great courage and longing to connect to our many imperfections that work against these aims. Jason Schulman's teachings are based on kindness toward the self and others, and the work of the foundation is to actualize this kindness in everyday life. If you don't know who Jason Schulman is, well, over the past 40 years of teaching, he's worked to reconcile the deistic or relative paths of liberation with the consciousness of Buddhism and other non-theistic paths of liberation to create a truly non-dual path of healing, one that does not exclude any aspect of reality. His work emphasizes the healing of the personal ego and its rightful place in any path that seeks liberation from ignorance and the awakening of compassion. It also seeks to bring the human world, with all its imperfections, into alignment with the realization of transcendent awareness. In this way, we develop a conscious awakening to the sacredness of every sentient being and every time-bound moment. And now, before we dive into a conversation, I'm going to lead us through a short meditation. So if everybody just take a moment to start to settle in, relax, I'll guide you through this. So begin just by being with your breathing. Be with your breath as it is. Don't get caught up in thinking your breath should be deeper or more regular or better in some way. Your breathing, just as it is what's keeping you alive, and that's sufficient. So just be with your breathing for a moment. So your intention in this meditation is to invite everything in. Begin with the sounds that are around you right now. Maybe you hear the sounds of other people talking in the background, maybe a car horn or a siren, maybe the wind or a bird. Invite all of those sounds in. We want them to be with you. We want them to be here. Now, invite all of the parts of yourself to be with you right now. The small, frightened parts, the courageous parts, the lazy parts, the devoted parts. Actually say to yourself in your mind, you, the one who forgets to be kind to yourself, be here with me. Come in. You, the selfish one, be here. You, the one who is argumentative, be here as well. You, the one who remembers God from time to time, come in. Be here. You, the one who forgets God from time to time, be here as well. Invite all of the parts of yourself and all the parts of your environment to be present right now in this moment. Whatever comes into your heart or mind, whether it is a difficulty or a great insight, it doesn't matter. They are all treated equally. Invite them in. Let's all be with this for a few moments. And you can gently bring yourself back to the space, back to normal waking consciousness when it feels right. And we're back. So, today is an opportunity to have a conversation about our spiritual lives. And what we want to do here is invite conversation. So there will be time for audience interaction, and we would love for you to participate with questions, comments, anything at all. We want to hear it. And today's conversation is titled, Everything is One. So now what? I'm joined by Damon Farnham and Hedrick Nordmark. My name is Tim Rothschild, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. And let me open it up to a question to the group. Do you agree? Let's ask something fundamental. Do you agree that everything is one?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is I think it's easy to intellectually understand that. It's like, oh yeah, okay, we're all part of this one big wholeness, and um, we're all interconnected and whatever. But I don't think that's enough to really know this deeply. Like, I think it becomes much more meaningful if you have an embodied experience of that, and then I think one can have a conversation as to how that impacts one's life.
I think that's a great starting place, Henrik. Yeah, like I totally agree. And I think especially when people are on a spiritual path of a lot of different kinds, the idea of oneness, like the idea of this, one universe that we're all a part of is very common, and it's a great, intellectual idea. And I believe that that's a starting place, is that we have a sense of it. And then exactly what you just said is like, I think that, part of kind of the journey of this path is to, over time, learn how to have more of an embodied, living experience of that. And I think that kind of segues a little bit into kind of what we were hoping to talk about today. Yeah. So yeah, it's true, but
So
it's not enough to end there. Yeah.
yeah. Well, so I'm wondering about the differences between sort of an intellectual approach to oneness and what it's like to embody it. What's the difference there, and why might we want to do that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's tricky. Because I think the first question to that is even like, how do you even achieve that? Because, okay, even if I have intellectually come to accept that everything is one, what is it that I do to have that embodied experience? To like, I jump into a lake? Is that going to make me feel more
Yeah.
at one? Is it walking in nature? Is it? But the thing is, even if we might feel more connected to life and things in a nice stroll through nature, surely, even when we're walking down a very busy street in the middle of a city, that truth must still hold true. And so, what is it we do to have that embodied experience, if not at all moments of time, um, just more frequently? And I don't think that's an obvious, easy thing to solve.
I agree, and I one of the things that just went through my head as you sort of said this was, so a lot of times when we talk about oneness, it's this grand spiritual concept that can sort of, almost eliminate the personal. Like there's this bigger reality that is beyond our personal self that we're like striving to be a part of. But immediately when you start to talk about, embodiment and an embodied sense of oneness, we're already starting to bring back in the personal. We're bringing in this like relationship between me, as myself, and whatever this bigger interconnected sense of, web of life that we're trying to, kind of be plugged into and experience. So I think what I love about that question is that if you think about it, it already starts to bring us into, I think for me at least, and probably all of us, what we experience is kind of this this gift of, quite frankly, what Jason Schulman has brought to this idea of non-duality is that it's not just, this grand idea, but it's also includes the personal.
I think we can really, at times, I'll speak for myself, the experience of waking up to a larger reality when at some point you realize that, oh, we do all share these sort of impersonal characteristics. And I'm willing to entertain the fact that God is love, God is compassion, these kinds of things. And it, like you said, Damon, it can eliminate the personal, right? So an embodied experience means that now, okay, everything is one. So what happens when I live it, right? So it's an interesting comment because for me at least it's like an attitude shift. It's like, okay, so I'm willing now to believe that I think at one point at least I have an impact on the world because everything is connected, right? So that starts to change how I look at the world, and I also start to think about compassion a little bit more, these sorts of things. Does that resonate with either one of you, sort of that change in attitude?
It does, and I think it goes to a really important question: is like, why should we even care about cultivating a sense of oneness and wholeness? Because, like, okay, even if this happens to be true, like, is it actually going to make my life any better as an individual? Having that understanding, whether it's an intellectual understanding or an embodied understanding. And I don't think it's immediately obvious that it would. Um, I mean, maybe you could argue that um, even with an intellectual understanding of wholeness, that we might be a little bit friendlier to the environment. We wouldn't just like dump toxic waste everywhere because we have some sense of interconnectedness and we don't want to screw ourselves over by destroying the environment that we depend upon. But I do think it goes much deeper than that, at least from my personal experience of developing this non-dual consciousness. I feel I'm able to alleviate some of my personal suffering, and I think that is, to me, one of its greatest gifts of developing that consciousness.
Talk about that a little bit more, just in terms of how has it helped relieve the suffering?
Well, for one, it makes me feel less alone if I'm connected to everything, and I am at one with, nature, the universe, my fellow man. And also, I guess, because it becomes less personal, it's like, okay, I don't have to take things as, deeply. Of course, the ego is always scared of being destroyed, and it's not that I would want to die or be destroyed, but if I at least have an inkling of belonging to a greater whole, maybe I can tolerate the idea of death a little bit. Yeah, it becomes a little bit easier to tolerate that notion.
You know, I also I want to just go back for a second to what you said, Henrik, about the environment, because I think it's a really practical, at least for me, is that when we start to realize that we are interconnected, that we are not separate only, that yes, we're separate and personal, but that we're also, part of this greater whole, we start to, like, the idea of the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, like the planet doesn't feel like this separate objective thing. It actually starts to become like, it's almost like there's a little bit more sort of sense of, I don't want to call it transparency, but something like that between, my body and being and this environment. It's like we're less subject object. It's like we are and we're not. And the same thing happens with people too, right? Like the very practical application is that I am going to want to hurt people less because I feel less separate than them. Like I don't feel like they're only this objectified thing on the outside of me. Yes, they are. Yes, they are separate from me, but they're also me. They also have the same longings, the same desires, the same fears. And that makes me feel like, maybe hurting somebody from my unconscious. It's like I don't, it's harder to do. It's like there's more of me that feels like, well, wait a minute, like there's me in that. On that level. So I wanted to share that because I thought that was great. It pulled me right into that when you said that.
Yeah, it's almost like becoming empathetic towards the plight of others is being selfish, because that is still us at some level.
It does speak to some of the benefits of living your life as if everything is one, right? We can be a healthy kind of selfish, and helping others can make us feel good in different ways. And I'm just thinking about too, like how this idea of oneness, you talk about, Damon, you talk about kindness to others in some ways by sort of relating to them and with what's in yourself. For me, I've also found that on like very subtle levels, I've been willing to give myself more of a break at times, or give myself more kindness, knowing that somehow I'm connected to the whole web as well. And there's something about that. So it's like I can give it to myself, I can give it to others. And I guess there's a lot less self-will, me saying, all right, so this is the way things should be, and this is the way things need to be, and the way I should be in the world. And there's more of a listening that comes in regards to sort of the water that's swimming the fish, if I can put it this way. That makes sense? There was an article, I think, in the 1990s, if you look it up, the Tao of swimming, or the Tao of fish. I can't remember what it was, but I remember reading it many years ago. And it basically said that the fish's gills and the way they navigate with the water is such that it's like they're not willfully swimming their way through it. There's actually this relationship, this ongoing relationship. And they're almost slaloming like a skier would slalom downhill. And I think about that, right? So, okay, if everything is one, how is life swimming us?
Yes.
And I love that you just brought in the word relationship, because I think that ends up being, kind of this always present underlying factor that that's very easy to kind of overlook when we feel like we are only separate. But the truth is like we're always in relationship with everything, with each other, with the environment, like exactly as you're describing it. And when you start to like experience it that way, it starts to be more of this like kind of relational exchange, instead of just a like, me and you, or me and it, whatever it might be.
Yeah, it becomes a dance with life, right? There's give and take, and yes, you can still think about the individual dancers in a dance, but if you take it as a whole, it's just like all these different little particles moving around, dancing around, and we're just one element of that, and can actually be quite playful, I think.
I got to tell you, I feel a little inclined to throw something in the mix here, because it's very real for me right now. And I apologize if this kind of takes us in a direction that, is difficult. But, we're doing this live right now with everything that's happening in the world. And we kind of talked before we got on here, hey, if this comes up, do we want to address it? What's happening with the Israelis, the Palestinians, and I mean, really all over the world, Ukraine, Russia. I mean, it's happening in a lot of places. And for me, it's very present. It's present in my body, in my thoughts, my feelings, in what I am seeing and taking in. And so I realized that we're having this conversation about this wonderful concept, which is very true for us, and we've spent a lot of time learning how to live this concept more. And then the reality of it is that we also live on a planet with absolutely horrendous things happening that seem inconceivable and completely unacceptable. And I'm not bringing this up to try to like offer any solutions or answers or even any ideas about it, except for to just like acknowledge that it's part of it. It is part of it. And what we do with that is a huge, almost unanswerable question. But it's part of it.
I've thought in my own personal journey through non-duality and cultivating that kind of awareness, I've found that so often I'm in a position of not knowing. And this is one of those times where I don't know exactly what to do, but by continually not denying that something like this is happening, it has an effect on me. And at least I'm not resisting that effect on me. And so it's sort of an ongoing, alive relationship with life where a part of me is asking the question, how can I be helpful? And what can I do? And I don't know. But I do know that my heart is breaking whenever I think about this. And I do know that it brings me to places in myself that are extremely difficult to reconcile. And I wonder what others are dealing with in terms of the same thing. I wonder if others have the kind of community to be able to lift them up when they're starting to feel a little bit small and they want to react. So I'm thinking about all of that. The big I don't knows. And how we can still be connected and in relationship to the overall whole in that sense. So I don't have any answers.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, just even us acknowledging this, this is going to sound weird, but it brought my body in. It lit up my body. Like I felt this, even though this is absolutely devastating. Like, more of me is present. Just because we're including now, even what is almost unbearable to include, or at least trying to, a little piece of it.
I'm glad you brought it in, Damon, because to be honest, there's no way you're not the only one feeling this way, and it would be some sort of imaginary place if we all pretended like it wasn't happening and we could do this in service of the ones who can't, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So let's go with it, right? I mean, you're doing the non-dual thing of not creating separation, right? This thing was coming at you and you were trying to push it away to be here, but it was like, why don't we take the risk? Why don't we take the courageous path and start to see what will happen if we actually include things that are incredibly difficult to be with as fellow human beings walking this path?
Right. And I'm a little scared to even say anything because I know that, in this conversation, I try not to read a lot of the commentary because it's so polarizing, and the polarization to me, I understand it and it kills me. So I'm almost scared to talk about it. But I do know, in the spirit of non-duality and this oneness that that we're trying to talk about here, is that when you feel like you are separate only, and that happens, in a lot of these situations, understandably, but those become the consciousness where it becomes possible to hurt other people. When it's literally about me and the other, and that's it, and there's no other, there's no room for anything other than that, then it becomes possible that I can hurt somebody, or that people can hurt other people. So again, I don't know what to do with that here, but I know that when the other person's pain becomes recognized as my pain, or becomes recognized in me, it becomes much harder to hurt somebody else. Or if I do, then I want to clean it up,
And yet at the same time, it's not that non-duality then says, oh, everything's okay, everything is whitewashed, we are all one, and there are no differences to be acknowledged. Like yes, there is polarization, that needs to also be included. It doesn't make it easy or comfortable, but maybe you can be with it a little bit better.
what I'm hearing, Henrik, is at least what I'm hearing is like you're helping me locate myself in the non-dual relationship to the duality that we inevitably live in, right? So there's this thing that happens where it's like, I'll put it this way, the non-dual work that we do through Jason, to me, has become conflict resolution. So it's not denying the fact that conflicts are going to happen, right? We did a show on this, the value of war at one point, right?
Yeah.
A little provocative, but the idea is, can we come into relationship with this as quickly as possible, and knowing that we're all one, come from a place of kindness and compassion to see what can actually be done here. And obviously, it's extremely difficult because the entire world is dealing with this on every level all the time.
And I think, what you're talking about locating, you said locating yourself, and you're talking about the polarization and the opposites. And the fact is that sometimes, like, if we were really going to sort of honor, the idea that everything that we're talking about, including the opposites of things, the polarization, the extremes, that these are all kind of like, features that make up this great oneness, then, we have to say that every one of those features in some way, and this may, depending on somebody's understanding of this, but each one of those features has to have a right to exist. Yes. Like to try to get rid of it or say that should not exist in the world, we're immediately making the universe smaller. We're immediately saying, well, oneness is good, but not that, so now we're going to cut it away and say, here's a sanitized version of oneness that I'm okay with. But then it becomes like, well, then what the hell do we do with that? And the truth is that, in my opinion, we have to find ways to let those, sort of polarizing sort of experiences that we all have exist, and maybe be expressed, but we have to find ways to do it that is not perpetuating the suffering by taking it out on somebody else. And it's like, okay, yes, this has a right to exist, but then how do we do that? How is it expressed in the universe without continuing to hurt another person and further the suffering?
And I feel like, sorry, I just want to say, I feel like I want to make it clear that we're talking about a non-dual state of consciousness, right? We're not talking about the physical ways that we need to send help in there and get a military and do certain, we're not trying to problem solve those things today. What we're talking about is the container that stays in relationship to what's here in a way that might actually help resolve these conflicts on that level. So I just wanted to make sure that we said that, because so often, with our lack of consciousness, we rush to a solution before we have a relationship to the disease. We rush to a cure. Right? And this cure is based completely on our preconceived ideas and notions and judgments about how life should be. And what we're trying to say is, while we're doing all the necessary work to help the people that are suffering on a physical, emotional, psychological level, what we're talking about here in non-duality is about being awake in a way that is not creating obstacles before the blind. And being awake in a way where we have an attitude of openness, even to the places in ourselves, like hatred for something that can bring up, right? And like these aspects of life that are really hard to be with.
Right. Righteousness.
Righteousness.
Certainty. Like, my view is correct. Okay, well, everybody feels that way sometimes. So how is that possible?
Right. The being in a relationship thing, I think it was, oh gosh, I don't remember the doctor. Maybe you'll know when I say this. He's a TV personality, but he says, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Rumi also said, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. Right? And we're talking about, I've heard Ramdas talk about this. The last gate before heaven is self-righteousness. So all of these different people are trying to say different ways of the non-dual understanding of saying, be in relationship to what's here. Wake up. That makes sense?
Yeah. And this is so messy.
Yeah.
Like the humanness of, like, it's an outward disaster and it's an inward disaster. like the humanness of trying to, I don't know, have all of this that we have inside of us, and accept the fact that, you know, I don't know, sometimes I think this way in response to the conflict. And sometimes I think, I see this perspective and I think that way. And I mean, it's just messy and it's not clear.
And a lot of people have preferences in terms of clarity or confusion, and they try to move into one side of it, and it can be a problem. But part of what I'm just pointing out are the ways in my own life that in living this oneness, everything is connected. There are ways where I recognize that I leave things out. And we already mentioned this, but it can get really personal. Like, do I have a preference for confusion or clarity? And can I tolerate one or the other long enough to actually be in relationship to what's happening? And I think that has a lot to do with what the embodiment that we were talking about is, right? When we embody the oneness, we're going to have to address all of this stuff, all of the ways that we feel the world should be a certain way, while simultaneously coming into relationship with the way it is. So it's almost like a Taoist approach.
Right. And and about the embodiment piece, like for me, my experience of this has literally been that this experience, this bigger experience of non-duality, of the interconnectedness of things, it's actually not something that my mind can hold, but it is something that my body can hold. It's something that my body, more and more has the ability to, I don't know, tolerate isn't the right word. Live, these opposing views, these things that totally contradict each other, that shouldn't, from a lot of sort of normal consciousness perspective, shouldn't even be able to exist in the same territory. But somehow, intellectually they can't, but in the body, somehow they can.
Yeah.
In some ways, I wonder how advanced this is, what you're talking about, in terms of being able to bring
Yeah.
it into the body, And I want to keep in mind our audience in terms of what actually might. I'm not saying what you're saying is not helpful, I'm just saying, like, I know what you're saying.
Right.
So
I'll share a little. Maybe I could share. I want to share a little story with you guys.
yeah.
I was talking to my mom in the last couple of days, and we were talking about all this stuff, and I remembered. It's a little bit of a segue, or a little bit of a tangent, but I remembered the first time that I consciously experienced somebody hurting me. And it was somebody in my life, and they were mean, they were cruel, and the way that they talked to me and interacted with me, and I was very young, but I hurt. And I remember getting on my bike and going for a bike ride, and I was riding down the road, and my instinct was that I wanted to find somebody else to hurt. I literally I was like, I need to hurt something. And in that very moment, I realized that it was my either inability or unwillingness to experience my own suffering. I needed to push it outside of myself. And that was how I thought I would make myself feel better. And seeing this, and I've been thinking about this, in these conflicts, because on a very basic level, the ability to, and I don't want to simplify anything. I'm so like nervous to like simplify anything, but the ability to like tolerate suffering and not have to like, try to push it onto somebody else to make it feel better. Seems like it has its threads through a lot of this.
And gosh, it's so important to be awake to that, right? What do we do when it's too much?
Sometimes we break.
That's been my experience too.
And sometimes we curl up with a loved one.
So what could you say to everybody now in a situation where there might be too much for them to take in? What can a non-dual understanding of life offer?
Whatever suffering you're feeling has a right to have a place. It had it had one way or another. It has a right to have a place. And I feel like one of our jobs is to find a way to allow that to be true. Um, whether it's work that we do with ourselves, with somebody else. You were talking about being in nature, early on, Henrik. Um, I don't know what you guys think, but it's like just trying to find ways um, when it is bad
Yeah.
to give it a place.
Part of what I do is when something comes in that's too much for me to be with, and the most loving thing that I could possibly do with my attitude of openness is to not kill it off and not exterminate it completely. And when I'm in relationship to something like that, I wonder, where is the love here? Where's the compassion here? What's the intelligence within this event that's going on? And at bare minimum, at least what it lets me do is continue to live in a question as to how can I be in relationship to what's now appearing in my life in a kind and compassionate way, and in a way that doesn't continue the suffering. How can I somehow be with and metabolize whatever possible I can do in my small world, you know? So it gives just at least a little bit more space, right? So I'm not killing something off, and I'm giving something a little bit more space for it to show me its heart. What are you made of? But I don't have the answers. I think we make them up as we go.
Sometimes lately, my prayer has been something like, help me be with what I can't be with, help me feel what's hard for me to feel. Um, help me see what's hard for me to see. Um, so that just kind of like asking for help to try to be like, just like you're saying, to try to like not eliminate, but be with what's here.
What I'm hearing there with you, there might be other things going on, but I'm hearing the trust that you have in being in relationship to what's here, and being humble enough to say, I don't know what to do here. I need help. And knowing that because everything is one, everything is interconnected, that there is something listening, and that your heart will be answered in the language that it asks its question.
It's beautiful, Tim. Yeah.
But where do we want to go from here?
Oh man.
Maybe we could give some people some ideas of how to cultivate this awareness, even in difficult situations. I mean, we've spoken of a few already, but I think there are more that we could suggest.
Somebody just posted something that Jason wrote recently in an email that went out to the community. And he said that healing must start someplace. So let it start with you and all of us doing the process together. He's talking about the process for non-dual conflict resolution. invoking some of the fixed laws of this universe to work in favor for us, poor, imperfect beings confused by the conflicting wars inside and outside of us. Instead of being consumed, let us be renewed. And by the power of these laws in which the non-dual conflict for resolution process is built, let our hearts, which can hold all opposites, flow outward and make a difference. So I guess I take solace and refuge in the fact that there are groups of people and there are strategies.
Yeah. I know a lot of people in our community are using the non-dual process for conflict resolution a lot right now. And I mean, if people don't know it, it's an amazing process. And I mean, there's a lot of great things about it. One of the things that it really encourages is, bringing in the unknown. That even though we have a position, or a viewpoint, that we have to also accept the fact that, we can't truly know what is best or what is right. We think we know. And trying to very purposefully, like you're saying, Henrik, like purposefully include something like that.
And just to give a little bit more context for those who may not be familiar with this non-dual process for conflict resolution, I'm sure there must be resources on the Foundation of Non-Duality website, but essentially you work with some kind of statement, problem statement, desire, conflict, and you go through a process called bracketing, where you're trying to get to like a more essential, more grounded statement. And from there, there's a series of what would you call them? Poetic statements of some kind that you read through, and it helps you develop a new kind of relationship to that conflict that you have brought to the table. And that sounds very abstract, but if you go look it up, it's I think you'd be pleasantly surprised by trying it out.
And I think it really comes from the place that Damon was just coming from, in terms of this humble place of saying that I don't know how to figure this out, but I do know that I can be in relationship to life in a particular way, that something might be able to happen that's better than what's happening now. Some sort of illumination. And I don't know what else to do besides be humble in the face of conflicts like this. And again, I'm talking and want to make it clear, this is about non-dual consciousness. I'm not talking about boots on the ground, going in there and helping. I'm talking about how to hold this conflict in a way that's actually helpful.
Right.
And even for those who are involved with getting people with boots on the ground and stuff, like bringing this kind of non-dual consciousness can still be helpful there, because then you can at least be in more relationship as you're affecting change. And I don't think it's unique to this current situation in Israel and Palestine, but anything we want to change in our lives or in the world, maybe we see some kind of injustice, some kind of unethical behavior, some company throwing toxic waste into a lake or whatever. You can still take action. You can still affect change. It's not that we become monks on a mountaintop developing this non-dual consciousness and we become disengaged with the world. It's more that by cultivating this consciousness, we're in more relationship to all sides, all stakeholders, And from that place, we can maybe create more effective change, more relational change.
Right.
Thank you for making
Right.
that clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Like change that isn't just going to, essentially perpetuate the suffering. That isn't just going to take one side over another, whatever that might be. Like it actually can affect in the world of action, um, seeing the other person as a person, like a real person, whoever they are a real person. They are somebody's child, whoever they are.
Yes.
With the same longings, the same desires, the same fears.
And at the same time, right, being awake to the fact that who we are does have an impact on the world, and we're contributing to the making of the world as much as the world is making us. So that awareness of the other, and also the self-responsibility that we all have, if we're waking up and we're noticing certain things, I think it would be a good thing to make use of it. So listen, I'm not seeing too many comments from anybody coming in. I'm actually surprised. I was hoping that more people would comment on something as potentially inflammatory as this. But I appreciate it coming in, right? I mean, because if there's any other way to talk about how oneness or non-duality can help, it's about bringing it into the body, right? And what's going on in the world right now is the body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've read a few different things, but I appreciate how we're trying to talk about this. Not trying to come up with solutions or answers or positions, um, but to just try to have a relationship with it.
So there are other ways that I thought about leading into this conversation today so it's like, okay, so everything is one. How does that change how I live my life? And I started to think about, I don't know, how we're always in one place. I'm thinking about my own personal life and how I often wonder and imagine some other place where everything is taken care of. There's no more problems. I feel whole, so on, etc. And how I reject all the things that are actually happening in my life. I reject my life as it is in response to this split. And I was wondering, have either of you, can you resonate with that in terms of that sort of fundamental split?
That has certainly happened. I'm drawing a blank on how
Yeah.
non-duality would help me solve that or ameliorate that.
Well,
So
the solution was always like recognizing that my life is what it is. And this is actually where I need to make the changes. And this is where actually life can support me if I'm, like Damon, humble enough to ask the right questions.
Yes.
So I'm just making sure I'm tracking you. So, and I might be off kind of how I took you in, completely, but this sense of like trying to get somewhere or trying to change something or always trying to be something different. It's like something other than this moment, whatever it might be.
See, for some reason, it doesn't include the way our lives actually are at the moment.
Right. And I think that, the more that we can, like for me personally, again, what we've been talking about is like giving everything a place, everything having a right to exist in this moment. That might be things like longing. That might be things like impatience. That might be things like, fear. It may also be things like awe, and love. But to me, it does seem like the more I let those things be present in this moment, the more kind of like I don't know how to say it, like the next moment becomes just like the next living moment from now, instead of something that I'm trying to kind of rush into to escape this one.
Yes.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think if we're in relationship and we allow things to be, then things can move and change and evolve, and doesn't mean we're necessarily in control of how they change.
Yeah.
But at least they don't stay static and frozen. I mean, there's that phrase, "What you resist persists," and I think that can be very problematic, and certainly if we're expending a lot of our effort, consciousness, and time trying to fight against something we don't like in the world. I like I'm not saying don't do that, because obviously we should take action as well, but just not accepting things at all will probably pull you back more, because you're not actually in relationship with reality.
And one thing I will say, I know we're kind of getting close to the hour, is I just feel like this is important, is that none of us have to be with this by ourselves. Is that this is too much to hold individually. So community, working with a healer, a helper, a therapist, a friend, just having help to be with what's here, in the midst of all of this, I think is, I definitely want to stress that, because none of us have to be in this by ourselves. And it's one of the things I'm incredibly grateful for, with you guys and our whole community.
And everybody that's listening, right? They're part of this. So that seems like a good place to end it for today. If anybody wants to continue this conversation, please reach out to the Foundation for Non-Duality. Obviously we live and survive and thrive on your on your contributions to the foundation. So anything you can offer will be greatly appreciated. We're going to continue doing these roundtable discussions. As you can see, we don't always know where it's going to go, right? But we try to stay in relationship to what's here. And we try to embody the non-dual things. So please, next month, the second Friday of every month is when we're going to be doing this. So please tune in. Questions and comments are helpful. And anything you can offer to the foundation is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much. Our love to you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You bless the years as they roll on by, and the days are a sign of what you're thinking. We want eternity, and you give us time, and our own lives seem to pass while we're blinking. mysteries beyond our thinking. Oh, God of mysteries, gone far beyond our thinking. We ask for light, you give us night and day.